Tonight, we journey far. Dim the lights if you haven't already. Let the soft glow of your screens, or perhaps the quiet darkness of your room, settle around you. Let the sounds of your day recede, dissolving like ripples in a still pond. Tonight, we're not going to a land of dreams in the traditional sense, but rather we're easing ourselves into a journey through time itself. We will explore the echoes of a past that shaped the very songs of childhood, the lullabies and chants that we often dismiss as simple, innocent melodies. Let's ease into tonight's journey together and discover the whispers hidden beneath familiar tunes. You are here, now, in your space of comfort and quiet. Feel the softness beneath you, the gentle rise and fall of your own breath. But in your mind's eye, allow the comfort to begin to subtly shift, like the fading light of an old photograph. Tonight, you are not just an observer. You are there. You are enveloped by the ancient air, touched by the unseen currents of forgotten times. You will walk through the alleyways, feel the bite of the wind, sense the fear that once permeated the very stones of history. Your guide will be the whispered rhymes, innocent on the surface, but holding stories of hardship, of struggle, of a world utterly unlike your own. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the air fill your lungs, and as you exhale, imagine the centuries unwinding, the modern world fading into a distant hum. You are no longer tethered to your present moment. You're drifting, gently, through the mists of time towards a world where fear and survival were constant companions. A world where a simple game, a child's chant, could hold the collective memory of unimaginable sorrow. You begin to feel a chill. Not the sharp, sudden cold that makes you shiver, but a pervasive dampness that seems to seep into your very bones. A kind of ancient chill that lingers in the air even when the sun tries to break through. You open your eyes, though you don't really have eyes as you know them now. You are simply aware. You are standing, or perhaps kneeling, on ground that feels strangely uneven, littered with refuse. The scent that reaches you first is overwhelming, a thick, sweet, sickly smell. An odor of decay and something else. Something that makes your throat tighten with an ancient primal fear. It's the smell of the living, yes, but also of something that has died, and of the fear of what is yet to come. You are no longer in your comfortable room. You are somewhere in the late medieval streets of a bustling city, though the usual bustle feels muted, heavy. A hush has fallen over the cobblestones, broken only by the occasional distant cough or a low moan that echoes from a darkened doorway. The air itself seems thick with dread, a palpable anxiety that settles on your skin like a fine, invisible dust. You look around, or rather, you sense the surroundings. The buildings loom tall and close, leaning inwards as if whispering dark secrets to each other. The sunlight, what little there is, struggles to penetrate the narrow gaps, leaving most of the alleyways in perpetual shadow. You try to take a deeper breath, but the air is foul. It's not just the sweet decay, it's the acrid tang of unwashed bodies, the pungent stench of waste, and a persistent underlying smell of fear. You notice, or rather you feel the subtle itching on your skin, a tiny crawling sensation that makes you want to instinctively scratch. This is a world where hygiene as you know it simply doesn't exist. Filth is a constant companion, a layer on everything, from the grimy walls to the rough cloth of the few figures you vaguely perceive moving like ghosts in the shadows. You hear a faint, almost melodic sound. It's a child's voice, small and reedy, singing a simple rhyme, but the cheerfulness of the tune is utterly contradicted by the desolate, hollow feeling that surrounds you. It's a sound that makes your inner self flinch because you understand, with a clarity that transcends words, the terror embedded within it. Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The words are innocent enough, aren't they? But you are here, now, in the very air that birthed this rhyme, and you feel the raw, stark reality of its origin. This isn't just a children's game. It's an echo, a memory solidified into verse of the most devastating pandemic humanity has ever faced, the Black Death. Quirky fact, the rosy or rose-colored rash was a symptom of the bubonic plague, often appearing as a circular, inflamed lesion. The pocket full of posies wasn't for decoration. It was believed that sweet-smelling flowers, herbs, or spices could ward off the bad air, or miasma, thought to carry the disease. People would carry them constantly, holding them to their noses to try and filter the putrid air, a desperate, futile attempt at protection. You can almost smell the overpowering scent of lavender and rue now, trying to mask the deeper, more horrifying smells. You feel a dryness in your throat, a phantom thirst that comes from imagining the dehydration caused by the fever and vomiting that accompanied the plague. Your skin feels clammy, even though you're not truly experiencing it. The sensation of dread is that strong. You sense the sheer scale of the death, the emptying of homes, the constant presence of carts rumbling through the streets, carrying away the bodies day and night. The ground beneath your feet feels cold and unyielding, as if it's absorbed centuries of sorrow. Historians still argue about the precise origins and meanings of nursery rhymes, but for Ring Around the Rosy, the correlation to the plague is one of the most widely accepted and chilling interpretations. You ponder this now, this strange human instinct to take the most terrifying experiences and distill them into something that can be repeated, even sung by children. Was it a coping mechanism? A way to process the unfathomable loss? Or perhaps a stark warning, passed down through generations, even as its original meaning faded from conscious memory? You don't know the answer, but the weight of the question presses down on you. You can almost taste the fear, a metallic tang in the air. The ashes, ashes part of the rhyme, it speaks to the cremation of plague victims, or perhaps the sneezing fits that were another symptom, leading to the phrase, achoo, achoo. And then the inescapable, we all fall down. You feel the inevitability of it, the pervasive sense of doom that must have hung over every city, every village. You would have lived with a constant knot in your stomach, a perpetual vigilance against the invisible enemy. The stillness of your present moment is a stark contrast to the historical chaos you were experiencing. This quiet, this safety, this comfort, it would have been an unimaginable luxury back then. You feel a deep, quiet gratitude for the simple fact of breathing easy, of not fearing every cough, every touch. Allow the dark, heavy air of the plague-ridden city to slowly dissipate now. The smells begin to soften. The chill lessens. The distant moans fade into silence. You are gently lifted, carried forward through the currents of time, leaving the terrifying echoes of pestilence behind. But the journey continues. You drift, sensing a shift in the air, a different kind of tension. The landscape feels more organized now, less chaotic, but still undeniably harsh. You feel the dampness of an English garden, a place that should offer solace, but here it feels like a stage for something far more sinister. The scent is of earth, damp leaves, and the faint metallic tang of iron, perhaps from tools, or something else. Something cold and unyielding.
You become aware of carefully arranged rows, not of vibrant flowers for joy, but of a strange, rigid order. You sense clipped hedges and paths that lead with grim precision. The air is heavy with a sense of control, of power, and an underlying current of fear. This is Tudor England, and you are sensing the reign of a queen whose name still whispers through history with a chilling resonance. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. The rhyme seems innocuous, a child's playful question about a garden. But you are here, in this historical moment, and you know the truth that many historians now connect to these simple words. You feel the cold stone beneath your phantom fingers, the rough texture of a garden wall. You hear the distant clanging, rhythmic and chilling, of something being hammered, something being forged. Historians still argue, fiercely at times, about the direct attribution of Mary, Mary, quite contrary, to Queen Mary I, often called Bloody Mary. But the popular interpretation suggests her reign of religious persecution, during which hundreds of Protestants were burned at the stake. You sense the flames, not the physical heat, but the psychological terror, the burning conviction of faith clashing with the brutal machinery of state power. Quirky fact, the silver bells are often interpreted as thumbscrews, instruments of torture used to extract confessions. The cockle shells are thought to be another torture device, perhaps a type of genital clamp, or even the branding marks used on heretics. And the pretty maids all in a row could be a chilling reference to the rows of gallows, the victims waiting their turn, or even the bodies of those executed for their beliefs, laid out for all to see. You feel a profound chill, a deep unsettling sadness at the thought of such suffering. You feel the pressure of conformity, the weight of a gaze that demands absolute loyalty, absolute obedience. You imagine the whispered conversations, the glances over shoulders, the fear of saying the wrong thing, holding the wrong belief. You are aware of the dampness in the air, a perpetual dampness that seems to seep into the very stones of the castles and prisons of the time. You can almost smell the stale air of a dungeon, cold and earthy, tinged with the metallic scent of fear and despair. You wonder what it must have been like to live under such a regime, where your very soul could be deemed an enemy of the state. Did you hide your true thoughts? Did you pretend to believe what you didn't? You feel the tension in the atmosphere, the precarious balance between life and death resting on the whim of a powerful monarch. The garden, a place of growth and beauty, transformed into a chilling metaphor for death and suffering. The faint, rhythmic clanging you hear now is a constant reminder, a subtle, disturbing backdrop to the quiet of the garden. It is the sound of metal, perhaps the forging of instruments, or the maintenance of the grim machinery of justice. You ponder the contrast between the innocence of the rhyme and the brutal reality it may represent. How did these dark truths become so deeply embedded in something so seemingly harmless? Is it the human spirit's way of processing unspeakable cruelty by transforming it into a coded message, a quiet warning passed down through generations? You don't have the answer, but the question echoes in the stillness of your mind. Let the oppressive atmosphere of the Tudor court recede now. The dampness lessens, the metallic tang softens, and the faint clanging fades away. You are floating, gently, through the currents of history, moving from the specific horrors of religious persecution to a broader, more enduring struggle. You sense a new landscape forming around you, one dominated by the roar of water, the creaking of timber, and the constant, rhythmic rumble of heavy traffic. The air here is different. It's thick with the smell of river water, muddy and ancient, mixed with the acrid tang of coal smoke and the stench of human waste. You're standing, or rather suspended, near a great stone structure, a bridge that spans a mighty river, perpetually under siege by time and the elements. This is London, centuries ago. The River Thames flows beneath you, dark and powerful, carrying not just boats, but the effluent of a sprawling, growing city. The sounds are a constant cacophony. The shouts of merchants, the cries of street vendors, the clatter of horse hooves on rough cobblestones, and always the groaning and creaking of the bridge itself, as if it's constantly struggling against its own collapse. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. The rhyme seems so familiar, so ingrained in childhood, but here, in the shadow of the Great Bridge, you feel the raw, terrifying truth of its lyrics. You feel the tremor in the ground as heavy quartz pass over, the faint vibration that seems to resonate through your very being. You sense the precariousness of the structure, the endless cycle of decay and repair, of building and falling. Historians still argue precisely about the precise origins, but several theories connect London Bridge's falling down to various periods of the bridge's tumultuous history. Was it about a Viking attack in 1014 that really did cause it to collapse? Or the constant state of disrepair due to poor construction and maintenance over centuries? Or something even darker? You ponder these possibilities, feeling the cold, damp air off the river on your skin. Quirky fact: one of the most chilling interpretations of this rhyme points to the ancient practice of bridge burial, or immurement, where a living person was supposedly sacrificed and buried within the bridge's foundations to ensure its stability. This belief was not unique to London Bridge, existing in various cultures worldwide. The My Fair Lady might even refer to the sacrifice itself, a young woman entombed within the stone. You feel a shiver, a phantom chill at the thought of such grim and desperate act. The weight of the stone, the crushing darkness of being buried alive, it's an image that makes the air around you feel impossibly heavy. You can smell the river, a potent mix of fish, mud, and sewage, an ever-present reminder of the city's vital artery and its cesspool. You hear the ceaseless flow of the water, a low, ominous rumble that seems to echo the bridge's own struggle for survival. You sense the sheer difficulty of building such a monumental structure with primitive tools, the countless lives lost in its construction, the endless cycle of repairs. You imagine the fear of those who depended on the bridge, the anxiety of crossing it, knowing its fragility, knowing that at any moment parts of it could crumble into the treacherous water below. You feel the wind whipping around you, carrying the spray of the river, cold and bracing. You sense the crowdedness of the bridge, not just with people and carts, but with houses built directly onto its span, creating a bustling, dangerous, and often collapsing street of its own. You imagine the shouts of the bridge dwellers as parts of their homes or the very pathway beneath their feet gave way. You feel the desperation of a populace trying to live and trade on a structure constantly on the brink of disaster. The sound of the river is a constant hypnotic presence, pulling your thoughts deeper into the past. It's a sound that has witnessed centuries of human endeavor, triumph, and tragedy. The rhythm of falling down, becomes an almost meditative chant, a reflection on the impermanence of even the grandest human creations in the face of nature and time. Let the sounds of the bustling, collapsing bridge slowly fade now. The smell of the river recedes, and the tremor in the ground subsides.
You are gently carried forward, leaving the struggles of medieval engineering and urban decay behind, moving towards a period of even greater upheaval. You find yourself in a different landscape now, one marked by the cold, damp stone of a fortress and the distant, unsettling sounds of conflict. The air here is sharp, metallic, tinged with the smell of damp earth, smoke, and something else, the faint, acrid scent of gunpowder and the chilling aroma of fear. You're standing, or rather suspended, near the thick walls of a medieval castle, a place that embodies both power and vulnerability. This is a time of civil strife, of kings and pretenders, of sieges and battles that shaped the destiny of nations. You hear the distant thud of projectiles, the splintering of wood, and the occasional roar of angry men. The sky above is gray and heavy, mirroring the mood of the land. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. The rhyme, so simple, so innocent, usually accompanied by an image of a clumsy Eggman. But here in this historical context, you feel the profound weight of its hidden meaning. You feel the cold, hard stone of the castle wall, its surface rough and unyielding. You sense the sheer scale of the conflict, the futility of trying to restore what has been irrevocably broken. Historians still argue about the true identity of Humpty Dumpty, but one of the most compelling and widely believed theories links it to the English Civil War and a powerful royalist cannon. You sense the immense size and destructive capability of such a weapon. Quirky fact, Humpty Dumpty is believed to have been a large, unmanageable siege cannon used by the Royalists during the siege of Colchester in 1648. It was placed atop the wall of St. Mary's Church, a strategically vital position. When the parliamentarians finally managed to blow up the wall beneath it, Humpty Dumpty had its great fall. The cannon, being so heavy and damaged, could not be moved or repaired by all the king's horses and all the king's men. You feel the immense destructive power of such a weapon and the desperate, brutal nature of siege warfare. The ground beneath you seems to vibrate with the echoes of ancient explosions. You feel the desperation of those inside the besieged castle, the gnawing hunger that sets in, the dwindling supplies, the constant fear of being overrun. You imagine the cold nights on the battlements, the exhaustion of perpetual watch, the sounds of distant enemy camps, a constant low murmur that keeps you from truly resting. You sense the futility of their struggle, the knowledge that defeat is inevitable no matter how bravely they fight. The air carries the smell of damp earth, a faint metallic scent of blood from past skirmishes, and the pervasive tang of wood smoke from distant fires, both cooking fires and the destructive fires of war. You hear the distant shouts of soldiers, the clash of metal, the rumble of approaching forces. You feel the cold seeping into your bones, a kind of existential chill that comes from being caught in a grand, impersonal conflict. You ponder the fragility of power, how easily a kingdom, a reign, a life can shatter and fall, just like a great cannon from a wall or an egg from a child's imagination. The rhyme becomes a quiet lament for lost causes, for broken dreams, for the inability to put things back as they once were. It's a subtle reminder that some falls are so profound, so devastating that recovery is simply not possible. You feel the weight of history in this moment, the countless stories of loss and irreversible change. Let the sounds of battle and the cold, damp air of the besieged fortress slowly recede now. The acrid smell of gunpowder fades, and the echoes of distant conflict dissolve into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving the brutal realities of civil war and military defeat behind, moving towards a time of even more concentrated sorrow and injustice. You find yourself immersed in a different landscape, one of narrow, winding streets, crowded with people, but permeated by a distinct sense of unease. The air is thick with the pervasive smell of poverty, unwashed bodies, stale food scraps, damp straw, and a constant low hum of desperation. You're in a city that is growing, but its growth comes at a steep price, particularly for its most vulnerable inhabitants. You hear the constant clamor of human activity, the distant cries of street vendors, the rumble of carriages on rough cobblestones, and the ceaseless chatter of a bustling marketplace. But beneath it all, you sense a subtle, more sinister undertone, the whispers of injustice, the rustle of fear, and the quiet despair of those trapped in cycles of hardship. 3 blind mice, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a thing in your life as 3 blind mice? The rhyme is playful, a simple tale of mice and a farmer's wife. But here in this historical context, you feel the raw, unsettling truth of its hidden meaning. You sense the cold, hard reality of persecution, of violence inflicted upon the innocent, and the terrifying power of those in authority. Historians still argue about the definitive origins of 3 blind mice, but one of the most chilling and widely accepted interpretations points directly back to the reign of Queen Mary I, the same Bloody Mary from the Mary Mary Contrary rhyme. You feel the oppressive weight of her reign, the chilling determination to restore Catholicism to England at any cost. Quirky fact, the 3 blind mice are often said to have been 3 Protestant noblemen who were accused of conspiring against Queen Mary I and were subsequently burned at the stake. The farmer's wife is Queen Mary herself, who was a staunch Catholic and ruthlessly persecuted Protestants during her reign. The act of cutting off their tails with a carving knife is a metaphor for their brutal dismemberment and execution. You feel a deep, visceral unease at this interpretation, imagining the terror of those who defied the queen, the public nature of their suffering. The air around you seems to grow cold, heavy with the memory of public cruelty. You feel the desperate scramble of people trying to survive, trying to avoid drawing attention to themselves. You sense the ever-present threat of informers, of neighbors turning on neighbors, of suspicion festering in the crowded tenements. You imagine the cold, damp cells of the prisons, the sparse rations, the gnawing hunger, and the fear of what awaits you if you are accused. The sounds around you are muted, as if the city itself is holding its breath. You hear the distant, somber tolling of a church bell, a sound that in this context feels less like a call to worship and more like a mournful knell. You feel the cold dampness of the narrow streets, the filth clinging to the ground beneath your phantom feet. The smell of fear is palpable, a sharp, metallic tang that cuts through the other odors of the city. You ponder the terrifying power of a monarch, the ability to condemn lives, to silence dissent with such brutal finality. You reflect on how such unspeakable acts could be distilled into a children's rhyme, a quiet, almost secret lament passed down through generations. Was it a way to remember, a coded warning against tyranny? You don't know. But the question lingers, a quiet ache in your consciousness. Let the oppressive atmosphere of religious persecution and the chilling echoes of public execution slowly dissipate now. The cold dampness recedes, and the subtle sounds of a fear-filled city fade into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving the struggles of political and religious oppression behind, moving towards a different kind of societal struggle. You find yourself in a grand, opulent setting, yet it feels strangely hollow, almost brittle. The air is thick with the scent of rich perfumes, expensive foods, and polished wood, but beneath it all, you detect a faint, unsettling odor of decay, of something rotten at the core. You are in a royal court, perhaps, or a grand manor house, a place of immense privilege and wealth, but one where debauchery and scandal lurk just beneath the surface. You hear the faint, high-pitched laughter of courtiers, the rustle of silk gowns, the clinking of glasses. But these sounds feel superficial, a thin veneer over a deeper current of whispers, rumors, and hidden vices. The light here is soft, diffused through heavy draperies, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere, as if everyone is playing a part. Georgie, Porgy, Pudding, and Pie kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. The rhyme paints a picture of a naughty boy, a simple, childish prank. But you are here in this opulent yet unsettling historical context, and you sense the profound weight of its hidden meaning. You feel the smooth, cold surface of marble floors beneath your phantom touch, the plush velvet of unseen furnishings. You sense the pervasive hypocrisy, the gap between outward appearance and inner reality. Historians still argue about the exact identity of Georgie Porgy, but a popular and compelling theory links it to powerful, promiscuous historical figures, specifically George Villiers, the first Duke of Buckingham, a favorite of King James I and King Charles I. You sense the immense influence and unchecked power wielded by such a figure in a royal court. Quirky fact, George Villiers was renowned for his charm, good looks, and scandalous affairs with both men and women, often breaking hearts and causing widespread gossip. He was highly favored by King James I, who showered him with titles and wealth. The rhyme, therefore, is thought to be a commentary on his philandering ways, his ability to seduce and discard, leaving emotional havoc in his wake. The boys came out to play could refer to the husbands or lovers of the women he seduced, or even rival courtiers who were tired of his influence and antics. You feel the moral decay of an aristocracy indulged in excess, divorced from the common people. The air itself feels heavy with unspoken secrets and suppressed scandals. You can almost taste the rich, heavy food, the sweet desserts, the strong wines, all consumed in a lavish display of wealth while much of the populace struggled. You hear the hushed conversations, the gossiping whispers that spread like wildfire through the court. You feel the chill of social judgment, the vulnerability of women in such an environment, and the consequences of a system where powerful men faced few repercussions for their actions. You ponder the way these private, scandalous stories could seep into the public consciousness and become immortalized, albeit subtly, in a children's rhyme. Was it a form of societal critique, a quiet way for the common people to comment on the excesses and moral failings of their rulers? You don't know the answer, but the question echoes in the opulent yet hollow halls of your historical awareness. Let the glittering yet morally ambiguous atmosphere of the royal court slowly dissipate now. The scent of perfume and rich food fades, and the rustle of silk and hushed whispers dissolve into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the scandals of the powerful, moving towards a much more fundamental struggle for survival. You find yourself in a desolate, windscaped landscape, one that defined by the bitter cold, the gnawing hunger, and the constant, overwhelming feeling of vulnerability. The air here is thin, sharp, and carries the pervasive scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and the faint, unsettling aroma of wild animals. You are in an early settlement, perhaps in a harsh new world or a remote, unforgiving frontier. You hear the relentless howl of the wind, the creaking of rough timber shelters, and the distant, lonely cries of unseen creatures. The sky above is vast and indifferent, often gray and heavy with the promise of snow, reflecting the stark struggle for existence. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle, and all. The rhyme is a lullaby, meant to soothe the child to sleep, but here, in this harsh, unforgiving historical context, you feel the profound, terrifying truth of its lyrics. You feel the biting cold on your phantom skin, the raw wind that whips through your being. You sense the immense fragility of life in this brutal environment, the constant threat of disaster, and the heartbreaking reality of child mortality. Historians still argue about the precise origins of Rock-a-bye Baby, but a compelling theory connects it to the early American settlers and the desperate conditions they faced. You sense the precariousness of their existence, the constant struggle against nature. Quirky fact, one interpretation suggests that this lullaby reflects the dangerous practice of early settlers who, lacking proper cradles, would sometimes hang baskets or cradles from tree branches to rock their babies to sleep, especially while working outdoors in the fields. The rhyme then becomes a stark, visceral reminder of the ever-present dangers in such a primitive and unforgiving environment. A sudden gust of wind, a weak branch, and the unspeakable tragedy of a child's death. You feel a deep, chilling ache in your phantom chest, imagining the terror of such an event, the constant anxiety of early parenthood in a world so full of peril. You can almost taste the bitterness of desperation, the blandness of a diet dominated by scarcity. You hear the cries of hungry children, a sound that pierces through the relentless wind. You feel the pervasive cold that seeps into your very bones, the kind of cold that leaves you perpetually shivering no matter how many layers you wear. You imagine the blisters swelling on your palms from endless manual labor, the raw skin from constant exposure to the elements. You ponder the incredible resilience and the profound sorrow of these early settlers. How did they find the strength to carry on day after day in the face of such overwhelming odds? Did they sing this lullaby to their children, knowing the terrible truth embedded within its words? Was it a form of preparation for the inevitable, a way to mourn what was often lost even before it happened? You don't know the answer, but the question lingers, heavy with the weight of untold sorrow. Let the biting cold and the desolate landscape of early settlement slowly recede now. The howl of the wind softens, the creaking of timber fades, and the raw scent of desperation dissolves into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the primal struggle for survival, moving towards a more enduring, pervasive societal issue. You find yourself in a different landscape now, one dominated by stark contrasts, grand estates and crumbling hovels, bustling markets and empty larders. The air here is sharp, tinged with the pervasive smell of wood smoke, damp earth, and the faint, persistent aroma of hunger, a kind of emptiness that clings to everything. You are in a historical period characterized by deep social stratification, where the vast majority struggled while a privileged few enjoyed immense wealth. You hear the distant bleating of sheep, the rhythmic clatter of looms, and the constant low hum of a society built on labor and consumption. But beneath it all, you sense a subtle, more insidious undertone, the whispers of injustice, the rustle of discontent, and the quiet despair of those trapped by economic oppression.
Ba, ba, black sheep. Have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for the master, and 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane. The rhyme seems innocent. a simple dialogue between a child and a sheep. But you are here, in this historical context, and you feel the raw, unsettling truth of its hidden meaning. You feel the rough texture of coarse wool, the faint tickle on your phantom skin. You sense the pervasive inequity, the stark reality of who truly benefits from the labor of others. Historians still argue about the definitive origins of Baa black sheep, but a compelling and widely accepted theory links it to the medieval English wool tax. You sense the burden of such a tax, the heavy hand of the ruling class on the common people. Quirky fact: in the 13th and 14th centuries, England's wealth was heavily reliant on its wool trade. King Edward I, among others, imposed a heavy tax on wool, which was often paid in kind rather than coin. The black sheep was particularly valuable because its wool could be dyed without prior bleaching, making it more desirable and thus more heavily taxed. The 3 bags full represent the division of the taxed wool. One for the master, the king, or the wealthy landowners who profited from the wool, one for the dame, the church, or the wealthy aristocracy, and one for the little boy who lives down the lane, the actual shepherd or laborer who produced the wool, getting a meager, often insufficient share after everyone else had taken their portion. You feel the injustice of this system, the deep frustration of working tirelessly only to see the vast majority of your output claimed by others. The air around you seems to grow heavier with the weight of unseen oppression. You feel the constant ache in your muscles from hard labor, the repetitive motions of shearing, carding, spinning. You imagine the chill of the early morning, the long hours spent tending the flock, the simple, meager meals that barely sustained you. You hear the distant, repetitive sounds of work, a constant drone that signifies the endless cycle of production and taxation. You ponder the way these economic realities, this inherent unfairness, could be subtly woven into a children's rhyme. Was it a quiet protest? A way to articulate the daily injustices of a feudal system without overtly challenging the powerful? Or a simple, straightforward explanation for children about where their livelihood went? You don't know, but the question lingers, a quiet echo in your historical awareness. Let the sounds of labor and the heavy air of economic oppression slowly recede now. The scent of wool and damp earth fades, and the subtle hum of a working society dissolves into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the burdens of taxation, moving towards the desperation of poverty and the struggle for daily sustenance. You find yourself in a busy, crowded street, but not one of prosperity. This is a place of desperation, where survival is a daily art form. The air here is pungent, a mix of stale bread, unwashed clothes, raw sewage, and the ever-present cloying scent of desperation. You are in the heart of a city's impoverished district, a place where people live hand to mouth, their lives dictated by the constant search for enough to eat. You hear the constant clamor of human activity, the shouts of petty traders, the desperate cries of beggars, the scuffle of feet on muddy ground. But beneath it all, you sense a palpable anxiety, a constant worry about where the next meal will come from, how to make ends meet. Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to give her poor dog a bone. When she came there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog had none. The rhyme seems simple, a quaint tale of a dog and its owner, but you are here, in this historical context, and you feel the raw, heartbreaking truth of its lyrics. You feel the gnawing emptiness in your phantom stomach, the desperate hope that turns to crushing disappointment. You sense the pervasive reality of hunger, the deep and enduring pain of not being able to feed even a beloved pet, let alone yourself. You sense the constant, invisible battle against starvation that so many faced. Quirky fact: while Old Mother Hubbard doesn't have a singular, dramatic historical event tied to it like some other rhymes, it perfectly encapsulates the widespread poverty and food insecurity that plagued much of the population for centuries. For many, a bare cupboard was not a momentary inconvenience, but a constant, terrifying reality. The dog can be seen as a metaphor for any dependent, a child or even an elderly relative, highlighting the emotional distress of being unable to provide for those you love when you yourself are starving. You feel the profound shame and helplessness that must have accompanied such a state of destitution. The air around you seems to grow thinner, as if even the nourishment has been sucked out of it. You can almost taste the blandness of hunger, the dryness of an empty mouth. You hear the growl of your own phantom stomach, a constant reminder of the body's primal need. You imagine the cold of an unheated home, the dampness of thin clothing, the desperate search for scraps, the humiliation of begging. You ponder the quiet dignity of those who persevered through such hardship and the quiet despair of those who succumbed. How did they find hope in a world that offered so little? Did they sing this rhyme to their children, a stark lesson in the realities of life, or a shared lament for their common plight? You don't know, but the question lingers, heavy with the weight of untold suffering. Let the sounds of the desperate city and the heavy air of hunger slowly recede now. The scent of stale food and desperation fades, and the hum of poverty dissolves into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the gnawing emptiness of scarcity, moving towards another aspect of urban struggle. You find yourself in a bustling, chaotic street, but this time the energy feels frantic, almost desperate. The air here is a complex mix. The sweet scent of cheap yin, the metallic tang of sweat, the acrid smell of coal smoke, and the underlying current of desperation masked by a facade of forced cheer. You are in a working-class district of a developing industrial city, a place where people live on the edge, always one step away from destitution. You hear the raucous laughter from public houses, the distant clang of factory machinery, the shouts of street vendors, and the ceaseless buzz of human activity. But beneath it all, you sense a palpable anxiety, the constant pressure of needing to earn enough, and the slippery slope of debt. Pop goes the weasel. 1/2 pound of tuppenny rice, 1/2 pound of treacle. That's the way the money goes. Pop goes the weasel. The rhyme is lively, almost cheerful, a quick, catchy tune. But you are here, in this historical context, and you feel the raw, unsettling truth of its lyrics. You feel the rough texture of worn coins in your phantom hand, the fleeting hope they represent, and the sudden crushing reality of their disappearance. You sense the pervasive cycle of earning, spending, and the inevitable pop of something being pawned. Historians still argue about the exact meaning of weasel in Pop Goes the Weasel. Some believe it refers to a tailor's iron or a shoemaker's tool, while others think it refers to a small, hand-cranked musical instrument that played a popular tune.
Another, perhaps more common interpretation is that weasel is Cockney rhyming slang for a coat, weasel and stoat for coat, suggesting the pawning of one's clothing. You feel the cold of thin garments, the shame of having to give up your possessions for a pittance. Quirky fact, the rhyme vividly describes the desperate reality of poverty in Victorian England and other industrialized nations. People would often buy cheap, basic foodstuffs like rice and treacle on credit, or pawn their meager possessions to make ends meet, only to have to redeem them on payday, often at a loss, thus popping their money or goods. It was a constant, exhausting cycle of debt and fleeting relief. You can almost feel the weight of empty pockets, the shame of walking into the pawnbroker, the cold knot of anxiety in your stomach. The air itself seems to shimmer with the invisible threads of credit and debt. You can almost taste the cheap, bland food, the sweetness of treacle providing a momentary, fleeting comfort against the constant gnawing of hunger. You hear the sharp, distinctive pop of the pawnbroker's door closing, a sound that signifies both a temporary solution and a deeper loss. You feel the exhaustion that comes from perpetual worry, the burden of trying to keep up appearances when your life is teetering on the edge. You imagine the narrow, gaslit streets, filled with the shadows of despair and the desperate hope of one more shilling. You ponder the human spirit's ability to find a rhythm, a tune, even in the depths of such economic hardship. Was this a shared experience, a quiet lament for the daily grind, or even a sardonic joke among those caught in the cycle? You don't know, but the questions linger, a quiet echo in your historical awareness. Let the sounds of the bustling, desperate streets and the heavy air of financial struggle slowly recede now. The scent of gin and coal smoke fades, and the frantic hum of city life dissolves into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the pressures of daily survival, moving towards a much grander, more destructive form of societal upheaval. You find yourself in a landscape undergoing radical and terrifying transformation. The air here is thick with the pervasive smell of fear, of change, and the distinct, acrid tang of blood. You are in a city on the brink of revolution, where the old order is crumbling and the guillotine stands ready to claim its victims. You hear the roar of angry crowds, the rhythmic beat of drums, and the chilling thud of a blade falling. The sky above is often gray, mirroring the grim determination of a populace pushed to its limits. This is a time of extreme violence, of an entire social fabric being torn apart and rebuilt, often with brutal force. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. The rhyme is a simple nursery tale of two children and a tumble. But you are here, in this terrifying historical context, and you feel the raw, chilling truth of its lyrics. You feel the cold, hard cobblestones beneath your phantom feet, slick with unseen horrors. You sense the immense upheaval, the sudden, irreversible fall from grace and power. Historians still argue about the precise origins of Jack and Jill. While some theories link it to older Norse mythology or even King Charles I and his failed attempt to reform the alcohol tax, leading to Jack being a measure of beer and Jill a measure of wine, a compelling and widely popularized interpretation connects it to the French Revolution and the fate of Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. You sense the immense tension, the boiling resentment of a populace suffering under extreme inequality. Quirky fact, under this interpretation, Jack represents King Louis XVI, who fell down from his throne and broke his crown, lost his kingship and was executed. Jill represents his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, who came tumbling after, with her own execution shortly thereafter. The hill can be seen as the social and political ascent to power, or even the small hill where the guillotine was often set up. You feel a profound sense of historical irony, the way the fate of monarchs could be so starkly yet subtly reflected in a child's verse. The air around you seems to hum with the echoes of a roaring crowd, hungry for change. You can almost taste the dry dust of the streets, the metallic tang of fear, the bitter taste of injustice that has finally boiled over. You hear the relentless, ominous creak of the guillotine, a sound that became the grim anthem of the revolution. You feel the desperate, exhilarating energy of a mob, the overwhelming power of collective fury, and the chilling realization that how quickly order can descend into chaos. You imagine the cold, calculating gaze of those who wielded the power of life and death, and the terrified, defiant faces of those awaiting their fate. You ponder how such a brutal and iconic event could be distilled into a children's rhyme, losing its original context, yet retaining a core truth about a catastrophic fall.
Was it a way to remember? A quiet warning about the perils of unchecked power? Or simply a macabre joke that became ingrained in popular culture? You don't know, but the questions linger, heavy with the weight of revolutionary bloodshed. Let the sounds of the roaring crowd and the chilling echoes of the guillotine slowly recede now. The scent of fear and blood fades, and the tumultuous energy of revolution dissolves into silence. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the brutal realities of political overthrow, moving towards a different kind of excess and hidden cruelty.
You find yourself in a grand, lavish setting, one filled with the sounds of merriment, but also an unsettling undercurrent of extravagance taken to the extreme. The air here is heavy with the scent of roasted meats, sweet pastries, fine wines, but beneath it all you detect a faint, almost imperceptible odor of something more. An underlying disregard for life, a subtle cruelty masked by layers of luxury. You are at a grand feast, a spectacle of wealth and indulgence. You hear the tinkling of silver, the rich laughter of the elite, the melodic strains of unseen musicians. But these sounds, though seemingly joyous, feel strangely superficial, a thin veneer over a deeper current of excess and perhaps a hint of barbarity. The light here is warm, diffused by candelabras, creating an almost unreal glow, as if the entire scene is designed to dazzle and distract. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king? The rhyme is whimsical, a charming image of singing birds emerging from a pie. But you are here in this context of lavish historical feasts, and you sense the raw, unsettling truth of its lyrics. You feel the smooth, cool porcelain of a fine plate, the heavy weight of a silver fork. You sense the pervasive indulgence, the sheer disconnect between the lives of the wealthy and the common people. Historians still argue about the precise origins of Sing a Song of Sixpence, while some theories connected to a coded message about the suppression of monasteries in England, or even a general satirical jab at courtly life, a widely discussed interpretation points to actual, bizarre, and often cruel culinary displays of the past. You sense the strange, almost grotesque entertainment value of such a dish. Quirky fact: the concept of live birds emerging from a pie at a banquet was not entirely mythical. Such a dish was indeed a form of lavish entertainment at extravagant feasts in medieval and Renaissance Europe. It was a spectacle designed to impress and amuse the guests. The birds were not literally baked into the pie to be eaten, but rather enclosed within a hollow crust, sometimes with their legs tied together to prevent flight. When the pie was opened, the birds would fly out, creating a dramatic, if somewhat unsettling effect. You feel the strange blend of wonder and discomfort at such a display, the casual cruelty implicit in using living creatures as mere props for entertainment. The air around you seems thick with the smell of rich food and the faint, almost imperceptible scent of confined, frightened life. You can almost taste the richness of the food, the overwhelming flavors of spices and roasted meats, a stark contrast to the bland, meager diets of the poor. You hear the excited gasps and polite applause as the pie is opened, and the brief flurry of wings as the birds escape into the grand hall. You feel the opulence of the surroundings, the softness of silk, the gleam of gold, and the unsettling thought that such displays of wealth often came at the cost of unimaginable suffering for others. You ponder the human fascination with spectacle, even when it borders on the grotesque. How did such a custom become a part of courtly life, and how did it find its way, softened and made palatable, into a child's rhyme? Was it a record of a bizarre tradition, or a subtle critique of aristocratic excess, where even living beings were treated as mere props for entertainment? You don't know, but the questions linger, a quiet echo in your historical awareness. Let the sounds of the lavish feast and the heavy air of extravagance slowly recede now. The scent of rich food and fine wines fades, and the opulent glow dissolves into silence.
You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the excesses of the powerful, moving towards a much more universal and enduring human experience. You find yourself in a different, quieter landscape now, one that feels both intimate and universal. The air here is cool, damp, and carries the pervasive scent of rain, wet earth, and the faint, almost melancholic aroma of age. You are sensing the vulnerability of the human body, its eventual decline, and its susceptibility to the relentless forces of nature. You hear the soft, rhythmic patter of rain on a roof, the gentle sigh of the wind through damp trees, and the occasional creak of an old house. The light here is dim, diffused by heavy rain clouds, creating a sense of quiet introspection, a moment of profound solitude. It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. He went to bed and bumped his head and couldn't get up in the morning. The rhyme is simple, a seemingly harmless description of a rainy day and an old man's sleep. But you are here in this quiet yet profound historical context, and you feel the raw, unsettling truth of its lyrics. You feel the persistent dampness on your phantom skin, the chill that seeps into your joints. You sense the immense vulnerability of the elderly, particularly in times when medical care was scarce and life was inherently harsh. Historians still argue about the precise origins of "it's raining, it's pouring." While it might simply be a playful observation of a rainy day, a deeper, more somber interpretation often resonates, reflecting the dangers faced by the elderly and infirm in a pre-modern world. You sense the profound quiet that can accompany the end of a long life, sometimes unnoticed, sometimes alone. Quirky fact: one interpretation suggests that the rhyme, beyond its literal meaning, hints at the dangers of strokes or falls for the elderly, especially in dark, unlit homes or during bad weather, when assistance was not readily available. The snoring could be a symptom of a stroke, and the bumping his head a fall, leading to an inability to get up in the morning, implying death. For many centuries, life expectancy was short, and old age often brought with it immense physical challenges and a greater susceptibility to the elements and sudden health crises. You feel a quiet, profound sadness, the understanding that for many, life ended not with fanfare, but with a quiet, unnoticed struggle in the darkness of their own homes. The air around you seems to grow still, holding the echo of a final, solitary breath. You can almost taste the blandness of plain water, the simple sustenance of life, yet also the cold, wet reality of nature's indifference. You hear the steady, relentless drum of the rain, a sound that can be soothing in safety, but terrifying when it signifies exposure and vulnerability. You feel the aches and pains that come with age, the stiffness in your phantom joints, the profound weariness that settles deep within your bones. You imagine the cold, drafty rooms, the inadequate heating, the loneliness of being infirm and alone in a world that offered little support for the aged.
You ponder the way these simple observations of human frailty and the power of nature could be distilled into a children's rhyme. Was it a gentle reminder of mortality? A way to acknowledge the inevitable decline of the body, even for the very young who sing it? Or a quiet reflection on the quiet, unremarked endings that often conclude a long life? You don't know, but the questions linger, a quiet, melancholic echo in your historical awareness. Let the sounds of the quiet rain and the heavy air of age's vulnerability slowly recede now. The scent of damp earth and age fades, and the dim light dissolves into darkness. You are gently carried forward, leaving behind the universal truths of human experience, moving back towards the warmth and safety of your present moment. The journey through the shadows of nursery rhymes is now complete. The ancient air that surrounded you begins to thin, the smells of distant centuries soften, and the faint sounds of forgotten struggles dissolve entirely. You feel a gentle warmth spreading through your phantom limbs, a sense of returning to comfort and quiet.
The chill that seeped into your bones begins to dissipate, replaced with a soothing warmth. The metallic tang of fear, the sweet decay of pestilence, the acrid smoke of battle, the cold dampness of poverty and injustice, all these scents now fade, replaced by the familiar clean air of your own space. The sounds of distant cries, the rumble of carts, the chilling fall of the blade, the endless patter of rain, all these echoes soften, becoming mere whispers on the edge of your consciousness, and then nothing but the gentle silence of your room. You are here now, in warmth, in safety, in quiet. Feel the soft cushion beneath you, the familiar texture of your blankets. Hear the gentle rhythm of your own breath, steady and deep. The harsh realities of the past, the hunger, the danger, the filth, the pervasive fear, they are distant now, echoes in the tapestry of history, not immediate threats to your present comfort. You have walked through the shadows of the past, seen the origins of those seemingly innocent rhymes, and understood the profound hardships that shaped them. You have felt the cold of poverty, the fear of disease, the weight of injustice, and the fragility of life. But now it's safe to rest. The journey is over. The echoes remain, but they are quiet now, settled within the vast expanse of time. Allow your mind to fully return to your own body, to your own peaceful space. The questions posed by history, the dilemmas of survival, the quiet sorrows of the past, they can gently recede into the background. For now, there is only the present moment, the comfort of your surroundings, and the deep restorative peace that comes after a long journey. Breathe in. Feel the quiet gratitude for your warmth, your safety, your health. Breathe out, letting go of any lingering tension, any remaining echoes of the distant past. You are secure. You are at peace. The simple rhymes, those echoes of a darker history, are now understood in a new light.
They are not just songs, but silent witnesses to the human condition, to resilience, to sorrow, and to the enduring power of stories. But their power to disturb has faded now, replaced by a quiet knowledge. You are drifting, not through time, but into a deep, peaceful calm. Let your eyelids grow heavy, your muscles relax, your thoughts soften like clouds. The journey is complete. Rest now. You are safe. You are home.